feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming to you Wednesday afternoon, it's September 17th. And on today's show, we are going to talk about the Wolves offseason being over. Training camp starts in less than 2 weeks, and the first preseason game is already on October 4th. But the reason I thought it was time to do the offseason is over pod is because they signed Bones Hyland earlier this week. Not so much because it was Bones Hyland, though I am kind of intrigued to see Bones in training camp and preseason a little bit. I say the offseason is over because you're required to carry 14 players on an NBA roster, and Hyland now makes 14 for the Wolves. Technically, you can go to 15, but teams that are as expensive as the Wolves usually stay at 14, like they did last season. So I've got Kyle here with me today. We will talk a little bit about Bones. We will talk a little bit about the point guard position later in the episode. But we're going to start just by looking back at the Wolves offseason, kind of set the table for training camp. I'm going to ask Kyle if 4 months ago he knew this was going to be the Wolves offseason, what 4 months ago Kyle would have, felt about the moves that the Wolves did make this offseason and the moves they did not make. Before we get started, I did want to let you know that we are about to ramp up our volume of shows. John Krasinski is going to join me on Friday. And then next week, all four of Jace Frederick, Chris Heim, Britt Robson, and Kyle Theige will join me to begin previewing the 2025-26 season. Coming up next, looking back at the Wolves offseason with Kyle. Let's go. Support for today's episode comes from Square, your all-in-one business partner for making your day-to-day easier. From point-of-sale systems and payments to inventory and customer tools, Square brings everyone together in one simple platform so you can stay organized, sell anywhere, and keep things moving. I was thinking about Square and them being a sponsor a few weeks ago when I went to the farmer's market. We got there, realized that we did not have any cash. So literally we could only go to the places that had Square to be able to purchase whatever food and drink or whatever we were getting. It really does feel like a need in today's business world. Square is a great tool. They provide you with comprehensive tools to manage your business, from all the behind the scenes work you do, tracking sales, staying on top of inventory, getting a better understanding of your customers. Squares keeps up so you don't have to slow down. Get everything you need to run and grow your business without any long-term commitments. And why wait? Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/DaneMoore. That's Square, SQUARE.com/go/DaneMoore. Run your business smarter with Square. All right, I'm now joined by Kyle Theige. Kyle, we are going to look back at the Wolves offseason here, which is naturally kind of scary to do today on September 17th, because do you remember what date the cat trade was last year? Do you remember?
I don't remember the number date, but again, I was at a restaurant. I had friends in town because I was like, hey, it's the last weekend before media day. Yeah. It's like the slowest time of the year. One of my best friends flew in, 4 espresso martinis deep, and then I got the notification, and then you're like, dude, we might have to pod. I was like, oh God, I can't even drive home. But yeah, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of it, right? It's like the 28th.
It was the 27th.
27th. Yeah. Okay.
Which is 10 days from now. I mean, that's, I know we lived it, but it seems crazy that a trade could happen 10 days from now. So we're going to treat this episode as if the Wolves offseason is over. I said off the top, I think that makes sense. Bones Hyland fills the 14th roster spot. You have to have a minimum of 14 guys. We'll see. There's some training camp bodies and stuff like this, but this is kind of like what the Wolves roster is. This is the offseason. We can look back. We will look back, kind of recap what they did. But I don't know. When I was thinking about framing this to you, let's think about what would we thought, let's say May 17th. What is that? 4 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
What would have 4 months ago you thought if you just got the information that, hey, this is what the Wolves offseason was? How would that version of you feel?
I mean, I kind of business as usual. I saw you when you sent me that message. It's like, what would May 17th Kyle have done? A lot of things actually differently. But it's kind of the offseason played out basically how we had predicted when we did that trade deadline podcast, where we did kind of scare people. We opened up Microsoft Excel and we're like, if they don't trade Julius, who was struggling at the time, early February, coming off that injury, they're like, they're going to lose someone. Well, it went better than I think you and I had predicted, but they did lose someone, right? In Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who got a ton of money to go to Atlanta. So I don't know. Like, I kind of thought it was business as usual. I was pretty happy with how the draft pick worked out, which again, in February, we kind of knew at that point the Pistons were going to be in the playoffs. But I don't know. I didn't really see any surprises. I guess the surprise May 17th to now would have been if they would have landed Kevin Durant, but they didn't. But outside of that, I mean, you saw Matthew Caldwell, the new CEO of the Timberwolves and Lynx, who's been busy working the last couple of weeks. Like, even he's starting to use the C word, right? Continuity. They're going to go back to that, and that'll be the kind of the baseline for this team this year. And if that bores you or doesn't excite you, I get it. But I think in their eyes, continuity is the whole reason they are where they are. And continuity led to the best season in franchise history, which in my opinion was 2 years ago when they had Carl. So I don't know. Nothing has surprised me. They did what they had to do. They paid who they had to pay. And now it's kind of like the last, again, not the Chicago Bulls reference, but like it's the last dance, I think, for this iteration of the team before what I think will be, there's no way continuity will be the phrase next summer unless they win a title.
When I was going back through it, just okay, Reed, Randall, they signed Alexander Walker out. I made myself go back to, and I think everybody should do this when thinking about the Wolves offseason, is go back to the Rudy Gobert contract extension in the middle of last season. It was actually at the very beginning of last season. But that's when the Wolves, that was the biggest, I would argue that was the biggest move of the Wolves offseason was Rudy Gobert. He was supposed to, for this season, the 2025-26 season, was supposed to be making $47 million. He opted out of that $47 million, and in exchange, the Wolves gave him 3 years, $110 million. So it dropped him from 47 this season down to 35. And this happened so long ago, you kind of forget that. You're like, oh yeah, wait, they extended Rudy. He's going to be old. Like, what's that going to look like? Like, I feel like that's the narrative around that contract. But the most relevant thing is that he doesn't cost $47 million for this season, and he's down to 35. And if you kind of look at it, that $12 million delta is what allowed the Wolves to play the offseason out the way they did once it actually became the offseason. Remember, Naz Reid had that $15 million player option. Well, he got offers for more than $15 million, so he declined the player option. All right, the Wolves gave him 5 years, $125 million. Well, next season, that 5/125 deal starts at $21 million. So that's a $6 million raise. That's only, Naz got a $6 million raise for next season. That's only half of the $12 million, that Rudy Gobert took on a discount or dropped his salary down by. So there's still this extra $6 million to work with. You go, okay, well, they must have given it to Julius Randle. 3 years, $100 million. He signed a $300 million extension. Well, it was actually it's the same number. He had a $31 million player option for this season, opted out of it, signed a new 3 years, $100 million contract. Starts at $31 million this season. It's the same number. Julius getting paid has no impact on the Wolves salary cap for this season because the number is the same. So you still got that like $6 million of Rudy's discount, and that went to Johan Berenger. Rookie contract, $4 million, drafted 17th overall. And that's pretty much the Wolves offseason. They were able to stay under the second apron because there's still a couple $1 million left there, right? Of the Rudy money after that. But to stay under the second apron, the cost was, all right, Nickeil Alexander-Walker leaves. He's got a 4-year, $60 million contract, from the Hawks. But it really is like the Rudy discount. They filled in the money around that of the discount, and that's what this that's what this Wolves offseason was, I think.
It's kind of funny how you paint that all out, because at the time of the Rudy extension, I think people thought it was a bad extension, even though, right, like too long didn't read. It was basically just, we'll add years onto it and decrease the number, which then allowed them, to allow them to do everything that you just talked about. So you had posed the question to me of like, which one of those transactions, and you just listed over a dozen of them, do you want to kind of go back over? And I was inspired by our friend and former Office star John Krasinski, because he kind of did a okay, it's been a handful of years since the Rudy Gobert trade. Who won it? And I've kind of graduated or elevated myself from the whole like who wins and loses a trade, because we've never agreed on like a rubric, right? You usually do those conversations in
I don't
the
know
moment.
if John agrees. He's written that story like 4 different times.
Hey man, listen, the Athletics got to pump out some articles. I respect it. So
we did fantasy football cops.
I did a whole week on jerseys once when I used to write. So, but to that point, it kind of made me think about the Carl trade, which we talked about at the beginning of and the 1 year anniversary. I think this is like our 9th year, you and I covering the team. But I think even though they're in what I deem the golden age of Timberwolves basketball, I thought after the Carl trade, it was the most toxic I can ever remember. And now you think about it a year later, the Knicks get Carl, they make the Eastern Conference Finals. The Wolves get Julius and Dante, they make the Western Conference Finals. But one thing I just don't really think we talk about enough is that the Karl-Anthony Towns trade did also include the 17th pick, which became Johan Berenger. Like that's a direct 1-to-1. And this is, I think, influenced by being in Vegas or talking to some people from the front office and people that talking to them lately who have been in the gym all summer. Like Berenger is on like the Zach LaVine level of hype for me, right? I mean, the Wolves have had a former first overall pick in Cat, and obviously Ant delivered and Cat delivered. They got Wiggins, who was first overall pick. But in terms of like a non-first overall draft pick, I mean, Berenger to me is on that. Like he could be anything. And if he becomes a really good player, like if he is the second timeline center that gets out in transition, can do a lot of the stuff that Rudy Gobert did, maybe not all of it, but then has more of an offensive game. I mean, who knows, right? Like maybe the Wolves didn't win the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, but it is impossible on September 17th, 2025 to say that they lost it. And I think that in and of itself is pretty interesting, because that was not the vibe when I had my 4th espresso martini last September 27th.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's an interesting ripple effect to this Wolves offseason. Obviously, if that Detroit pick doesn't convert and they don't have the 17th pick.
100%.
Like just from obviously they don't have Berenger, and so now you don't have like a center of the future, like all of those things. But you would kind of have this other roster spot, right? You would have a little bit more money to work with. I just wonder, like, what the alternate path of that is, of not getting that pick from Detroit, not getting Berenger, somebody different. There's another bullet point on this list. They would have added, I guess that's somewhat obvious, but it wouldn't have been a rookie. It would have been a different type of piece. It would have been a little bit more, quote unquote, win now, right?
Right.
Than Berenger was. But this sets up another, I don't know, are we in the 3rd timeline now? Something's going on.
But I also think, because this is something my dad and I were talking about, when they lose Nickeil, right? Or like what you just talked about, if they wouldn't have done the Berenger thing, they would have had a little money. What would they have spent it on? They might not have spent it on anything. But I think something good to remember with this new CBA is that sometimes, or oftentimes moving forward, you're going to see teams cut payroll. And in the past, or the way you and I were raised, when a pro sports team cuts payroll, just look across the street at those fucking idiots downtown Minnesota. They're deemed as being cheap.
You got to explain what that is. Other than
for the Twins, the pole ads, like cutting payroll, cutting scouts, making hot dogs $100. That's what they're doing because they're cheap. In basketball now with this new CBA, cutting payroll isn't because your owners are cheap. I mean, I hearken back to Tim Conley's exit interview stuff. I think he's the number one person in the organization who doesn't want to go into the second apron again, because he gets all of the punishments and stuff. I mean, he said it. He's like, we'll do it if we have to, but it's so punitive. So I just kind of make me think about the Nickeil stuff of they're going to miss Nickeil, and they're going to find a patchwork way with Rob and TJ and Jalen Clark to, maybe grow that role or expand that role. But the leadership stuff behind the scenes, like his role, his development, like they're going to miss Nickeil. But this new age of how transactions and financials work in the league, like you can't just keep paying everyone and swallowing big tax bills. So the new ownership situation is all taken care of, and moving forward, they paid the tax bill in June. But you do have to be, and this kind of goes all the way back to your Rudy Gobert domino, like the meme, right, where they set the little dominoes up. That actually allowed them to do so many things. And I think it should at least, you can make a lot of smart moves as the front office of any sports team, and it doesn't lead to a championship. but all you kind of want is your front office to be smart and forward thinking. I think that when you think about it now in the past, like that Rudy Gobert trade really set up so many avenues along with the Cat trade, which did they get equal value in players? I don't know, but they did get the F word, which was their thing when they did it, flexibility. And that flexibility has allowed them to continue to add pieces to this roster.
Yeah, it gave them flexibility, and it allowed them to do what we understand was their process, an understandable process for the offseason. To be determined if it's a smart one, right? Same with all 30 teams. You know, what like we have to, you got to kind of see how things go. I just say that all to paint the picture of like, that's what this offseason was. This offseason was working with the flexibility that they acquired from the Cat trade, the additional flexibility they got from Gobert lowering his salary and extending into the future. Like this is the path that they created for themselves. And you know, you talking to like some friends and stuff over the course of the summer, or, you know, you see stuff online. It's like, wow, they're the same team over again. And that wasn't enough. It wasn't even close to enough to beat the Thunder. And I always say, I'm like, yeah, you know, it wasn't close enough. They're going to have to improve to that. Okay, well, why didn't they get a point guard? Why didn't they do this and that? I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that would be sweet. Like, I would have liked them to get a really good point guard. How? You know, and it's not like the how is an impossible sort of thing. It's just you wouldn't have been able to get the point guard and these other things that you had. And maybe the path is it's Randall, and people are like, you know, if something had to be dropped, maybe it's Randall. They would have turned Randall into a point guard because you have not Naz Reid. I don't know. That's the way I like to think about off seasons in general, is not about exclusively what happened or what didn't happen. What even were the other paths that were possible to take? And I think that stuff is getting like, those paths are like thinning in this new salary cap environment, especially when you're at the level the Wolves are. So it's hard for me to figure out like, oh, this is a path that they missed along the way. I get that this is the path that they were on, given the expenses of it. And I think they massaged some things financially around well, again, starting with the Gobert deal.
Yeah. And unlike contracts or draft picks, like flexibility, if used correctly, doesn't really expire. And again, like the morning after Tim Connelly drove to Karl Towns' house, like that was part of the sales pitch, right? Because people were up in arms and they said, hey, flexibility. And at the time you're like, okay, but training camp starts tomorrow. Like no one cares about flexibility. We want to have a good roster. They have leaned into that flexibility. And to your point, like this will be, knock on wood, we still got 2 weeks, but the roster that opens up training camp. But I don't think it's like the final roster of, you know, Ant's tenure or whatever. Like I think that point guard domino is eventually coming, because a year from now, Mike Conley is a free agent, and who knows if he'll stay in the league, and you'll have another year of kind of data on Rob. And if neither of those guys is a solution for the 26-27 season, then you're going to go have to move a Julius or a Naz or Rudy to get a high level point guard to play next to Ant. So I think flexibility and continuity, like you can kind of do both at the same time. Like we want to lean into what we have, but Tim Connelly showed you that, I mean, when it worked really well with Cat and Rudy, he pulled the pin and pivoted, right? Yeah. So if it's not working, he's clearly going to feel empowered to make another big splash.
Some people might be thinking, well, what do you mean? What's the flexibility, Kyle? They traded Randall and DiVincenzo for Cat, you know, so those guys cost, you know, a lot of money too. Well, I'm pretty sure they cost 12 million less than Cat combined. I think Julius is making 31 this year. Dante's making 12. And I think Cat's now up at 55. So people like, I guess we could go all the way back to that other alternative path of not trading Cat. But remember, you're even more financially exposed in that path. And you can't do all of these things that you did if you kept Cat. Again, maybe that's the right path, but it's the details are completely changed. What you would have been able to do would have just been different. in some fashion. But we're about at the expiration date about talking about the cat trade. That's about 10 more days, and then I'm not doing it anymore.
No, that's just a 1 year anniversary. We're going to keep talking about it. I still talk about the Gobert trade. Shout out to John. But I will also say too that that cat salary number for the next year. I mean, that money is used for Julius, Dante, Rob, and Baby B. Like they're basically using those 4 guys for the same cat money. And once a year we should do this because it does suck, by the way, but gone are the days of trading cat into space so that you can clear the book. Teams don't operate anymore with, they only have 2 minimum guys on the roster for next year and they have all this cap space. Cap space is kind of gone. Now you acquire star players.
Paul George and the Sixers thing was the last one of that.
Yep. But now star players are acquired via, as I used the sectional thing last month, chunks of the couch you send out to get a new couch. So that was one of the things though. They broke Cat's big contract, which is well-deserved, into smaller contracts to make it easier to, again, if this thing doesn't work starting in mid-October, then they're going to have to make another splash to go find more talent to put around Anthony Edwards.
Kyle, let's take a break. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company, and I'm excited to announce that we are partnering again with Falling Knife this season, partnering on a Dane Moore pod-themed beer. We are again calling it Second Apron. It's a classic pale ale, and it will be ready and freshly packaged, and I think on tap for Wolves Fest at Falling Knife, which we also want to announce today. Wolves Fest is happening at Falling Knife again. This year, it will be October 18th. From 3 to 9 p.m. And as part of Wolves Fest, myself, Kyle, and Britt will be, I guess, part of the entertainment there. We'll be doing a live pod outside at Falling Knife that afternoon, evening at 5 p.m. So mark your calendars, October 18th, Wolves Fest, 3 to 9 p.m. at Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. We'll keep reminding you about that as we come. But yeah, that's a big one for us. October 18th, Falling Knife. Kyle, today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. I asked you for a couple Prize Picks. You haven't got to do a Prize Pick in a while. What do you got from the Thursday night football game this week, Bills Dolphins?
There is I think Patrick Mahomes free square where basically if he throws for 1 yard, you get that one hits. So, but yeah, Bills Dolphins. The Dolphins are terrible. The Bills are really good. I would imagine Achane more than, I think it's 39.5 receiving yards. He had 87 last week because, again, the Dolphins are always behind because they have no defense and they're forced to throw a lot, and he's one of their best players. So my guy, Achane from the Dolphins, more than paired with Patrick Mahomes, a little 3-1 action there.
Yeah, I threw that Mahomes one on there too. I took 2 Bills guys. I'm going to say Ray Davis has more than 21.5 yards rushing. If the game is as much of a blowout as everyone anticipates it to be, I would anticipate the backup running back getting 22 yards rushing. And then I said less than 22 fantasy points for Josh Allen, which you can do Prize Picks. What did he do last week? They scored 40 points against the Jets. I feel like Allen is just going to have these gigantic weeks when he's challenged, like he was by the Ravens in Lamar week 1. So I'm going to say a fine but not 22-point fantasy week for Josh Allen there too. So I've been messing around with Prize Picks all football season. It's really fun to do. I think perfect for Thursday night football and stuff like that. If you don't have any players going on your fantasy team, what have you, it's a great way to have something else going on the game. You can make a $5 lineup. There's always something going on over at Prize Picks. As a reminder, to put together a Prize Picks lineup, all you need to do is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. If you don't have a Prize Picks account, all you have to do is put in promo code Dane. When you sign up, you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app. Use promo code Dane when you create your account.
I know you have another segment coming, but I am really hyped for Wolves Fest. I'm flying in October 18th, as Dane said. We'll promote the hell out of it moving forward. But if you're a fan of the show and the weather cooperates, you should really come to that. I plan on buying beers for anyone that shows up. And then also Sunday, Vikings-Eagles. My first Vikings game. Yeah. Carson Wentz versus Jalen Hurts. I'm excited. So we'll see what happens.
I went to JJ McCarthy versus Penix last week.
We should have done a pod during that time instead. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Wolves filling that final roster spot. with Bones Hyland. This is kind of like the word, unless something else happened, it was going to kind of be Bones Hyland for this final roster spot. Kyle, I want to start by noting that the deal is only partially guaranteed for $425K. So if Bones is, he's on a $2.3 million minimum contract, but only $425K of that are guaranteed, which means they can waive him at any point during the season and not have to pay any more than that $425K. And I bring that up because last season, if you remember, the last player on the roster was PJ Dozier, and he was on a partially guaranteed contract for $1 million. And once he'd kind of played up, that's prorated, like once he'd made $1 million of his salary, they waived him and moved on from him there too. So that's not to say they're definitely going to, waive Bones at some point, but this is kind of a way to fill your roster up all the way, but not necessarily commit the full $2.3 million in a cap hit and leave yourself the F word, flexibility going forward there. So I don't know. I want to talk more about the point guard room in general than Bones specific, but Bones is the third point guard to start this season. What is your concern level with the point guard position? And does Bones, if you went 1 to 10, your concern level on the point guard position for the Wolves, and does Bones Hyland being signed move that number up at all, or down? I guess move your concern down.
My concern is an 8, and the Bones Hyland acquisition does nothing to move the needle other than just kind of make it move, and then it's back at 8. So, I mean, we'll see. I guess we'll get into maybe potential themes and mantras for this upcoming season, but like one of them that I would talk about is like Mike Conley last year going into training camp, I think was way more hurt than anyone really could acknowledge or would acknowledge or knew. And I think this year, as you saw, again, he had a hole-in-one a couple weeks ago in Minnesota. His golf game's strong. Like, I think his wrists are strong. I think he's back. So I would imagine, and I'm sure not everyone will love this, but I would imagine Mike Conley is your starting point guard opening night against the Trailblazers in Portland, and we'll still get a lot of run at the point guard spot. Rob Dillingham in year 2 has to play, right? Like we'll talk about that a lot. Whether he was ready or not last year, I would imagine I trust the coaches because they see him every day, but he has to play. The Bones Hyland thing, it's like if he plays, that's probably just not good. And it's no shade to Bones, but it's just like this team has gone now from 8 starters, lose Nikhil down to 7 starters. But there's 3 guys that come to mind right away that should get minutes. And that's before we even talk about Berenger. So it's kind of like, where is Bones? I think Bones is just an emergency break glass. And part of the reason I believe that is because what you just said, his contract is partially guaranteed. If they thought it was like Malcolm Brogdon didn't get a partial guarantee with the Knicks when he signed the other day. And I know that was someone who this fan base kind of wanted. So, but overall, I am very concerned about the point guard position because I've watched, as I'm sure you have, during times of boredom, all 5 games of Wolves Thunder. And it's like, Julius has to be better. And I think he will. And I think he'll find different spots. And they got to get more from Jaden and all these guys. Dante's got to hit shots. But they need a running mate in the backcourt that can take the pressure off of Anthony Edwards. And right now, we know Mike does a lot of good, important leadership, point guard stuff, but he can't do that. And with Rob, we saw him take a leap, I think, in Summer League, but we don't know if he can do that on an NBA level yet. We just don't. So yeah, 8 is my concern level because I don't think they can crack that ceiling of gentleman sweeps in the Western Conference Finals without another good guard next to Ant that can take the pressure off of him in high leverage moments.
I'm glad you brought up the Oklahoma City thing because I think what happened to the Oklahoma City series is the case for having more concern. I wrote down 6, and I knew that would be lower than you. And I think it's right. I do. I do think it's right. I think much of the concern to me is about the unknown of Rob Dillingham. There is a variance to Dillingham's season that I don't know. I could see a lot of different outcomes here for this. The full spectrum too, including like, oh, this worked. So that there's the confusion at the position. Conley is not, your starting caliber point guard, and he's not paid as such. He makes $10 million a year is what, a typical backup point guard makes. I think Mike Conley is fine at that number. Because I think for him, like, he's going to always be able to shoot it. It's different than like Drew Holiday in Portland, right? Where at some point in Drew Holiday's career, maybe now or soon, he's not going to be able to defend at the level that he could defend at 2 years ago. When Mike Conley made like 40% of his threes 2 years ago, I think that's very much possible to happen again here, provided health, stamina, some of those older things. He's a health risk, all of those things. But you know what I'm talking about with Mike? Like I think I understand what Mike Conley can do, and I feel like it's relatively bankable outside of, which is a big thing, sort of the chaos that comes with being a 38-year-old player in the NBA, of just being injury prone to that extent. My concern is lower because I don't think those are the only point guards on the team. I think Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle are very much point guards of this team. And I would even throw Dante DiVincenzo in there some of just as primary initiators of possessions, which I get is a little bit different than a point guard, but it is true that Anthony Edwards can be a primary initiator. That's a definite truth, right? Julius Randle, some people go, I don't know. Julius Randle, we learned last year, is a very good passer. DiVincenzo, I'd rather have him spotting up, but it's not like he can't get you into action a little bit or drive into the middle and drive and kick. Like there's enough other initiators here that I think the 8 out of 10 is so focused on the Conley Dillingham question marks or lightness there. The 8 out of 10, though, I think is justified when you go, okay, cool, Dane, but can they get past half court against the Thunder? And my answer to that would be no, but I don't think we're previewing the Wolves Thunder series right now. Does that make sense? Like, my degree of concern would be higher if we were previewing a Wolves Thunder series than I am about the point guard position just for the regular season at large.
The theme of this podcast was that the NBA offseason is over. So I do think this pod is our first one for the upcoming 25-26 season. A little bit of a season preview, and I think we should start here with the point guard position because I heard what you said, but I disagree because, and maybe this is a 4-hour conversation I had with Jim Pete on the golf course, but I still think about the point guard position in traditional sense of what was the biggest issue for this team last year. It didn't really have anything to do with net rating or offensive rating or any sort of stat. It had to do with just being smart, right? And I think Mike Conley, actually, I know this now, like they think Mike Conley is the smartest player on the roster. So that when he is out, I'm with you that yes, Ant can bring the ball up and Dante can get them into sets. We're looking at this right now through an NFL fantasy football prism of like, I'm sure Jake Browning for the Bengals can make some of the throws. Does he know how to get a patchwork offensive line into the right positions and not have false starts? Like it or not, and this is a tough pill to swallow, like they just don't think yet Ant can do that. And you and I we did this conversation, I think, after the Thunder series of like, he has grown so much and he has so much on his plate. It's a lot to also be responsible for making sure the other 4 guys are in the right spots. That's part of the reason they will continue to go to an old, possibly dried up 38-year-old well in Mike Conley, because he can do that. Now, if Rob can have some floor general on year 2, I don't have to wear, the SpongeBob backpack on the bus. That would be the biggest sign of growth for me, because I just think they need other guys out there. I mean, I know this is low-hanging fruit, but like, why does Joe Ingles inbound the ball in late moments? Because he's smart and trustworthy, right? Like Jaden doesn't do that. So I think the point guard thing is going to be an 8 for me, even though, yes, they do have other guys that can quote unquote dribble. I don't know if they have enough guys on the roster that when the ball is in their hands, they're thinking about other players. And that's to me, that is how I look at the point guard position in a very still 1995 traditional sense.
You're right. Like those guys, they don't think internally, or at least they didn't, that, yeah, okay, that's just Ant and he can do it all himself, or Julius, or this is enough. They don't think that. And last season showed us that Julius and Ant cannot be the exclusive primary initiators in a playoff series against the Thunder and beat them. My point is they have to. Like,
oh yeah,
that's it. Like, and I know that I think we're saying the same thing, but it's like there's no way like that the Wolves get better this season to like a large degree without Ant and Julius being able to be highly functional primary initiators that can get you into the offense intelligently and can do so without turning the ball over. That's just a must to success this season. And it's a risk. It's a huge question mark, because you're right. Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, and Bones Hyland do not give you the warm fuzzies that they got it either. I think what I'm doing is I'm just looking away from Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham as being the people who will be able to do it for them, and turning my head to Ant and Julius because I think they just are more likely to be able to do it. I don't think Mike and Rob can do it.
No, I think you're right. If Ant, it is an area of growth for him that we highlighted back on your infamous day of May 17th. I think now with Julius being paid and comfortable here and knowing where his kids are going to school and all that stuff, I think it's an area of growth. Like if you said, hey, Julius is going to fill a lot of that quarterback role, I would actually believe it. And if they both take strides in that area, dude, they're going to hammer the over of 48.5 wins. Okay. But I go back to, because a lot of us are using the same buzzwords. Well, can they dribble up the court? Can they handle the pressure? Can they get him into sets? I'm thinking like 37 seconds in the first quarter, the opponent made a basket. Like, who's thinking, okay, we got to get 2 for 1 here, right? Or, a big Jokic picks up his 4th foul early in the third quarter. Who's the guy that's like, let me get him in a high pick and roll, go at him and see if we can get the 5th one and get him off the court. Those types of things were the Achilles heel for this organization last year. They did not have enough. And again, there is some excuses built in of like Ant was 23, Jaden was 24, Nas was 25. We've celebrated their birthdays the last couple months, but they either need to become more basketball aware. And we're not calling them dumb. It's just to be at the highest level. When you watched OKC play, when you watched
like another
play,
evolution. Yeah.
They had multiple coaches on the court, right? So, I mean, that's why I sometimes give Chris Finch a pass. It's like, he's got things he's got to work on. But at the end of the day, man, it's the 5 guys that are within the lines. And when Mike is not on the court, I do think, Rudy's a really high level player. He's older too. So someone's going to have to fill that void. With Bones Hyland signing here, this is kind of the roster. Again, knock on wood. We'll see what happens 8 days from now. But someone or collectively, this group is going to have to raise their IQ, because I don't really think there's a talent deficit. I don't think they lost to the Thunder because they were so talent outmatched. I think they lost to the Thunder in 5 games because IQ and execution and all those little things, the Thunder were just way better at it than the Timberwolves.
Yeah, and it's good to bring Rudy up, because what we're actually talking about is they need what Rudy brings to the defense, to the offense. Somebody to slow him down, have him in position, always be consistently focused there. But Rudy can't do that offensively. He can maybe be in partnership with somebody who does that by running a specific flare screen action, or it's him and Mike, that little get action. They leave the elbow or the corner wide open. Like, but Rudy can't do it on his own there. And he's the only other vet in that, starting lineup, other than, that's why I go to Julius and Ant. I think they're next up on that pecking order of, it's like, can you give us more offensively from a control standpoint this season while still doing your thing? And Julius, 15, 7 and 7, and Ant, doing his thing, all NBA level scorer and 3-point shooter at 10 threes a game. It's a lot to ask. It's just, I don't know. I just come back to it. I'm just like, this is it. Like, this is the season, right?
Right.
Mike and Rob have to like figure that out. If they can't, Ant and Julius need to fill in for that. If neither, no Winnie. It's like that's it. Like I don't see other options here.
And again, the two smartest, and again, this has nothing to do with like being smart or dumb as an individual. It's about your basketball experience and IQ. But the two smartest players that'll be part of this rotation for the upcoming season are Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert. And if we do go to whether it's the second timeline or the third timeline, and we fast forward to a year from now, and maybe you're starting point guard Rob Dillingham, and maybe your starting center is Johan Berenger, like who is filling the IQ gap? Because that, like you're going to gain a lot of athleticism and shot making and shiftiness and all that stuff. But like, we always talk about with the roster and your Excel spreadsheet and all that stuff, like the margins in a 48-minute game are all of the little things of like getting into the bonus early, getting a 2-for-1, finding mismatches, all of those things. And to me, when I think back to the 24-25 season, that is far and away the reason that they ended up with a disappointing result, is because they do not either know how to attack the margins or understand the importance of those margins within the game.
Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if it is time to buy or sell your home, please do reach out to Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty to help you with the process. All you need to do to get that process started is go to her website, thedancingrealtor.com, or you can call or text her at 715-304-9920. Call or text her, set that up to book a free strategy session. Even if you're just beginning to think about buying or selling your home, Adriana can set you on the right track. Also, as a perk with the season coming up here, people who set up those free consultations will be entered to win a free pair of Wolves tickets. I know there's a chunk of you out there listening right now who are thinking about purchasing a home. If you are thinking about it, maybe procrastinating it, all you need to do is go to thedancingrealtor.com for more information. Set up that free consultation by calling or texting Adriana at 715-304-9920. Book that free strategy session. Like I said, mention this podcast, get entered to win a pair of free Timberwolves tickets when you book that consultation. Today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. We also know there's a chunk of you out there who are trying to get a home improvement project done this fall, and we would love it if you considered Your Home Improvement Company to get that project taken care of. We always tell you about the windows in the bathtub or the bathroom renovations that they have going on, but it can be any project that you have at your home. It will always be zero money down, zero interest, and zero payments until 2026. If you are thinking about windows, buy two, get two free deal on those triple pane windows. Very competitive. You won't see that anywhere else. Also, 30% off a deal on bathroom remodels. Contact Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Kyle, let's move
really high level stuff. Good for us.
Let's move over to the last thing we want to talk about. You can kind of, do you want to lead the way on this one, or you want me to?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about, I have a lot of free time on my hands right now because it's September and a lot of my fantasy teams are 0-2. Just like, you don't really know what the theme of a season is until the season plays out. And I've always joked about like, what is the title of the DVD that gets mailed out for the end of the year with all the highlights, which Adam Silver would love because it's Highlight League. But there was the weirdest team ever that one year, right? And that was kind of your phrase. And we sold a lot of shirts, and I still see them in North Loop every now and then. There was the two bigs, right? When they tried Kat and Rudy. There was the Run It Back tour. Shout out to Jake Kelly. When they just leaned into continuity. And then this last year, it became a theme of 8 starters, right? And that drove people crazy, but that was kind of Finch's mantra. And I was just curious, we won't really know this year's theme until we get through it. But if you had either a mantra that you think, a theme it could be, or something that you would write on the whiteboard in the practice facility or whatever, like, do you have one? And if not, I will debut mine.
I do. I think these are not team specific themes. I don't think internally they were saying the 8 starters. Like, I don't think that's how they referred to themselves at that. I don't think they referred to that second Cat Rudy year as the Run It Back tour. I wrote down the Pat Bev year. I don't think they called it the Pat Bev year, but we do that, right? We create a theme over the course of the season, and those were the themes: the 8 starters, the run it back tour, the 2 big experiment, the Pat Bev year, and then I don't know the rest of them. I just wrote down weirdest team ever. So my theme for this season is it's Ant's first push for an MVP. That's the theme to this season, because nothing that needs to be accomplished within the expectations can be accomplished without Ant doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, Ant needs to be great for this team to elevate beyond what they've been the last 2 seasons, because what they've been the last 2 seasons is a very, very good team that went to the won a ton of games 2 seasons ago during the regular season, almost were the 1 seed that season, bumped down to 3 there, but they're one of the best teams, a very, very good team. And then they lose in the conference finals to Luka and the Mavs. And then last year, they were a team that went back to the conference finals again. That means you are, again, a very, very good team. But to exceed that level of very, very good, this team needs to be great. And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about at the point guard position. I'm not sure I see a path to this team being great without Anthony Edwards being very much in that conversation of, the top 3, 4, 5 guys who are pushing for an MVP this season. And I think it's a fair theme because I think he could do that. I think he could very well be in that position. Everything I've heard about what he's done this offseason that I've been told from people around him, people around the team, is telling me he's about to do that. So yeah, like that's the theme. That's the theme this season is Ant's push for an MVP. And I think that requires kind of the flying V behind you there too, of like, Rudy's got to be doing this. Julius has got to be doing this. Mike has to be healthy at the point guard position. Dillingham needs to be able to support him. Like, it's not just that Ant needs to be great. It's Ant needs to be the most valuable player this season for this team to, I think, be thematically described as how they want to be, which is a great team in the NBA.
Currently 20-1 odds to be MVP. 6th best odds behind Jokic, Shea, Luka, Wemby, and Giannis. Who would have to, maybe he'll put 50, 30, and 20 a game just to carry that depleted Bucks roster. I like that.
Be above Wemby, right? Be above Wemby.
Yep. Yeah, because your team should win more games than the Spurs. Yeah. Your team should win more games than the Bucks. I like that. I like how you worded it too, that this is some theme that maybe we create. That's a good anecdote for myself. Although I will think sometimes the themes do come from what a player specific, or again, I don't think we have run the tape, but I don't think we created the 8 starters thing. I thought that was something that the best coach in franchise history, who I do enjoy,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But so I just want to preface my theme, because I think I can say it now in September and it'll leak into the season. I always hate when people say all in, because if you lose an all in thing, you have no more chips. This team is not all in, nor do I think this season, 25-26, is like championship or bust. I think there's levels to go that would make it a successful season that don't involve a Larry O'Brien trophy. But I do think that is something we should put a pin in for maybe down the road. Mine is pretty simple though. And mine is, and I would write this on the whiteboard, is no more excuses. Because I can think of 14 different people on the payroll at all different levels of the organization that could have said last year their mind was somewhere else, so there was excuses. So for example, I said Mike Conley. Last year comes into camp, really banged up wrist, couldn't swing a golf club. He's good now. No more excuses, right? This might be Mike Conley's last, not just shot at a title, his last season in the NBA, right? Ownership stuff. No more excuses. Mark and Alex own the team. They make all the decisions, including who they hire at CEO and dimming the lights in the lower bowl of Target Center. You're welcome. Chris Finch, no more excuses. We almost all thought Mike Onori was going to be poached this summer for a head coaching role, which he's well deserving. But Finchy didn't really lose any of his assistants, right? Even Pablo on the offensive end flirted with the Knicks, came back. He's got mostly his entire staff with some promotions and smaller changes. And no Team USA stuff, right? So to your point, I've heard the same thing. He's just been in the gym. He looks incredible. He's doing cardio, but like there's been nothing to really distract him. Up and down the roster, again, like Naz Reid, who I think loves being here and wanted to be here. There were games when I was in the locker room where Naz Reid, win or loss, whatever, you talk to him a little bit, he would mention $100 million. He wanted $100 million. You got it. No more excuses. Julius Randle and Dante, it must suck to be traded to a different organization 48 hours before you have to talk to the media. But now you're here and you have houses and your kids can go to school, and like up and down the roster, guys have gotten paid, or even like Rob and Jalen and TJ. It's like, hey, I mean, obviously they need to be subbed into the basketball game, but there's really no more excuses because all three of those guys were probably hampered by the fact that Nickeil was on the roster, just another guard that can do a lot of stuff. He's gone. So pick anyone. I mean, Tim Conley had an opt-out, and that opt-out has not been exercised, and he is under contract for 2 more years, and they will try to extend him, but like no more excuses. You know who your bosses are. They're probably your preferred bosses. So I just think this team, I'm going to use the phrase innings eater a lot because I really do think that postseason is kind of its own thing. But in terms of a regular season and you're preaching continuity and all this stuff, and a lot of guys have gotten paid or their extensions are kicking in, this team should dominate the regular season. They have 10 starters. That's before J gets on the court. They should just win a bunch of games, whether they're injured or whatever. Like this team should win a ton of games because there's nothing else to distract them now. And they should have one ultimate goal of like, again, the title. But can we stop being like an easy path for a team in the Western Conference Finals? Because in the last 2 years, so much success, but they weren't even close, really.
Yeah. No, I like that. No, that is, I think you're right. I think you win. Like that is where they are at, because the other ones we were going through is it's like run it back. But it is a play on, on what has happened previously. And the 8 starters were a product of like them making that trade. Yeah, it is the point where it's no more excuses. But didn't you say before there, like, it's not necessarily no more excuses to not win the championship.
Mm-hmm.
You might just get beat,
right. Exactly.
Better teams than them, but no more excuses about like beating yourself or allowing yourself to look lower, than you should.
You're in that locker room every night. There were moments, and I was the Naz Reid $100 million joke. Like he was a great competitor, had nothing to do bad, but it's like those guys were pretty open 2 years ago. I think him and Nickeil about like, even like you're thinking about that stuff, whether or not you're ever going to admit it. Like you are thinking about like, if I didn't play well tonight or last night, I only played 12 minutes, like, and I'm a free agent this summer. That's the type of stuff I want to always echo on this pod is like, yes, they make far more money than Dane and I, but they are just like us. They are just like the listeners of people thinking about their financial future and who they can take care of and their family and all that stuff. So for all those guys, and Julius is in there too, to get paid, like there's really no one that has to worry about their financials other than maybe Mike, and Mike just might hang it up. So this team should come into training camp in a couple of weeks and be like, hey, we are a really good team. We have the 6th best odds in the league to win the title. There's nothing else to distract us. Not Glenn Taylor, not the potential of Tim Conley leaving, not assistant coaches or our player development guys leaving. Like one mission, and that should be, for starters, to just nail the over on 48.5 wins, because they should be a fit. Last year was super toxic and chaotic, and guess what? They won 49 games.
Right.
Like I don't think the league is as strong right now. I think it's top heavy in the West. The East is clearly weak, but they should, and that goes back to your point too. All of that happens if Anthony Edwards takes the leap that we just talked about for an hour, and instead of being 7th in MVP voting is 2nd or 3rd.
Right. Or 4th or 5th. I mean, it does. I'm not saying he needs to be better than Jokic for mine, but
if he was, this is nitpicking, right? This is so.
I think they go together, actually.
If he was 5th, though, I don't think the team would have eaten as many innings as I think they should eat. You know what I mean? Like if he's 5th, they're probably not 55 and 27. In my mind,
I guess it's I don't have Ant as a top 5 player in the NBA. I did not have him as top 5 player in the NBA last season. I think there is a force. There will be a force when the time comes when Ant elevates into the top 3, 4, 5 best player in the league conversation. Because for him to get there, he is going to have done all the things that you were saying a half hour ago that they're not confident in him being able to do yet, or we're not confident in him being able to do yet. The reading the floor, the getting them into action, the consistency that he's just hasn't been out of a product of his youth. But I just think it's problems for the whole league once we remove that part of the equation from the Ant equation. You know what I'm saying? And then at that point, I don't know if that makes him better than Nikola Jokic or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but I think it puts him in the conversation. And then now, if I'm the other 29 teams thinking about it, I'm thinking about how I damn sure don't want to play Nikola Jokic in a playoff matchup. And I damn sure don't want to play Anthony Edwards in a playoff matchup. And I think Ant was like close to that. He had the playoff pedigree, but there's another level to it. And I think they play off of each other. You play the season with no more excuses. You put Ant in a better position. You let go of those excuses. You put Ant in a better position to be great. Ant has no more excuses. He puts himself in a position to be great. And yeah, now I think you have one of the best teams in the NBA.
I got nothing. I'm with you on that. No. I really do. And I think it means a little bit coming from me because I'm always like glass half full, like optimistic, like just happy to be here guy. But I really think there's nothing other than maybe like you said, like a talent gap once you get to the Final Four again. And you're like, and again, maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid. I just don't think the talent gap between what the Wolves have and what the Thunder have is as large as basically gentlemen's sweep in the Western Conference Finals. I think it's closer than that. And I think the reason they didn't win more than one game is because of all the margin stuff that we've talked about now. So, but you might not, maybe you run into a juggernaut, or maybe the Nuggets, who had a really good offseason led by a former Tim Connelly front office member, are just kind of like, hey, we're going to win 65 games. We're going to dominate everyone. So, okay, that's fine. But there should be nothing anymore that is holding back this organization at any level from being fully, I guess, damn it, all in on this season of trying to. They have a really high ceiling now, and that's impressive because, again, 9 years of doing this, that wasn't always the case. But there are still levels to go, and there's a pretty firm ceiling above their head right now. And it'll be interesting to see, led by Anthony Edwards, if they can kind of punch through that.
Maybe that's the line. Remove the ceiling. Like I think we went into the last 2 seasons.
No ceilings. Shout out to our guy Tyler Metcalf. No ceilings. Raise the roof. Raise the roof. That would be a good one. 25-26 Timberwolves. Raise the roof.
We'll keep working on these, but I'm glad we talked about this. I think we talked about the point guard room to we're shifting our sights from off season to preseason. Appreciate you coming on, Kyle. We'll get back together next week and every week for forever.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about it more, but I think Dane and I are probably going to do 2 pods a week moving forward. So this will be where I'm at for podcasts, and I'm excited, and I appreciate you. And you always give me a little runway at the end, and I just want to say I read a really bad stat. Speaking of stats, I think maybe this Friday or coming up is like the last 7 p.m. sunset, at least out here in Portland. So the days are getting colder, the days are getting shorter, and September is Suicide Prevention Month, and suicide is something that has hit my family very strong or very hard. So just another reminder as you get back to school, you back to your routine, that whoever you are listening to this, we love you and you are loved. And that if you need help to reach out, send me a DM, send me a message or something. We can put you in contact with good people. But check in on the ones you love, check in on those people in your community, because in our community, the Timberwolves community, there's a lot of great people, and we're thinking about you. So excited for another year of doing this with Dane, who is, I think, the best in the business and takes care of his people.
Love it, man. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for making this happen here. Coming up next on the show, John Krasinski is going to join me for the next episode on Friday. We'll kind of, I guess, further set the scene for the season. John and I don't get together all that often for pods, so I'm looking forward to that one. And then, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we will start rolling. All 4 of the repeat guests that you're familiar with should be on the show next week. They're scheduled to do so. But I'm really excited to get this thing rolling, and Media Day will be here shortly. You'll be here, Kyle. Appreciate you doing it. Until Friday with John, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.